Discover the incredible journey of a security guard who transformed lives and inspired millions. Jake Campbell felt the weight of every judgment that passed as whispering students flowed by the gleaming glass of the college corridors. He stood, a solitary figure clad in his dark uniform, the fluorescent lights flickering above him. The world around him vibrant with ambition and dreams loomed large, yet he felt like a shadow, underappreciated and misunderstood. His pulse raced with a familiar unease as students, fresh from their latest lectures, laughed and chattered. They didn't know him. To them, he was just the security guard, an inconsequential cog in the academic machine. All his life, Jake seemed to meander through obstacles, an ambitious son who wanted nothing to do with the home he'd built, an unyielding economy that brushed past him while leaving others thriving. It gnawed at his dignity, the constant feeling of estrangement. All those students believed they would transcend their backgrounds. Some carried tales of hardship marked by prejudice, yet here they were, striving for a future he no longer recognized, one he couldn't admit he longed for. As the days passed, a flicker of connection ignited in Jake through brief interactions with a few students. They felt he understood their challenges, and their fierce aspirations began to awaken something deep within him. Could he too aspire? One night, he stood at a crossroads in the empty parking lot, wrestling with the duality of his existence. Could that spark overshadow the loneliness that hung heavily between him and his son, whose life of ambition was distinct in its glaring contrast to his father's humble role? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Just then, as Jake mentally mapped out a future he never sought but quietly desired, chaos erupted. A student collapsed in the corridor, a seizure, a crowd gathered, gasps echoed, minds froze in terror. Jake's training kicked in. He scuttled through the throng, shouting commands, calling for help. Every second counted, and his movements were a whirlwind of clear-headedness amidst the frenzy. Adrenaline surged, heightening his senses as he attended to the student and drew from the depths of experience born from years of watching and waiting. Once the emergency subsided, whispers swelled around him, admiration mixed with disbelief. He was no longer just that guy. But with the newfound attention came disorientation. Pressure swelled like tidal waves, cascading over him. He felt exposed under the penetrating gaze of those who once dismissed him. Could he maintain this illusion of worth? Could he confront the echoes of his past as he stood firmly in the tumult of the present? And as he began to untangle this mix of respect and doubt, he stumbled upon hidden passions, a calling for art he once buried. Paintbrush in hand, he poured his unresolved conflicts onto the canvas, revealing both the joy and sorrow of his day-to-day existence. The paintings resonated within the community, yet as his talent flourished, an even greater fear gripped him. As accolades swirled around him, would they ever reach the cold distance growing between him and his son, who chased success in flashier forms? Each stroke brought hope, yet another moment of dread as Jake could feel the walls closing in. Would he always be boxed in as just a security guard, even as a new version of himself emerged? As uncertainty tightened its grip, Jake clenched his paintbrush, caught between possibility and the haunting question, had he waited too long to reforge the bonds with his son? Time stood still, caught in the balance of recognition and estrangement, leaving Jake to ponder if this art could truly bridge the gaping chasm of misunderstanding waiting for him at home. The following days blurred into one another for Jake. Each morning he donned his uniform, but now it felt different, weighted with purpose instead of mere obligation. The encounters with the students lingered in his mind, compelling him toward a path he had always kept at arm's length. As he stood guard over the corridors, observing their laughter and spirited discussions, a shift began pulsating within him. Perhaps he was not merely an observer, a caretaker of the premises. Maybe he could intertwine his role with what he learned through his art, activating invisible connections with those young minds who seemed so alive in their ambitions that a particular student named Mia had sparked a newfound interest for him. She reminded him of himself at that age, filled with hope and brilliance. One afternoon, she approached him after class, her face illuminated by an electric confidence that Jake envied. "Mr. Campbell, you've got something powerful inside you," she said, her voice steady. "You should showcase your art. You have a story to tell." Jake had been taken aback. To think that someone valued his experience outside the realm of security was almost bewildering. It was a duality he hadn't yet embraced fully: the artist and the protector, both of which carried stories worthy of sharing. However, her words provoked a subtle panic. What if he did fail? What if his vulnerability bore no fruits, but rather further isolation? Determined to delve deeper into this burgeoning passion, he sought solace in his corner studio at home, the walls adorned with his creations. Each stroke became a dialogue confronting his fears and unveiling layers of his identity he had buried under the weight of disappointment and routine. As colors bled together on the canvas, he felt emotions stirring: the love he held for his son, the bitterness of missed opportunities, the longing for connection. It was terrifying and liberating, offering an escape while simultaneously pulling him further into a reality he often rejected. Late one evening, the flickering lights of his studio cast shadows across his latest piece. A haunting depiction of his relationship with his son emerged, full of dark hues and chaotic forms. It rawly reflected the distance growing between them, a painful yet cathartic exploration. Jake felt the walls of the room close in as his heart raced. Could he show this to Ethan? Could he risk being this vulnerable with the very person from whom he sought understanding and acceptance? Jake spent the next few days wrestling with his decision. As the weekend approached, he discovered excitement mixed with dread. Would he finally confront his son and share this newfound sense of self? He imagined their reunion a clash of emotions, where betrayal, hurt, and love could coexist in a painful dialogue. The tableau of his paintings was now infused with purpose. They were more than just artwork. They had become his internal map, guiding him toward a vital conversation, a confrontation with truth that he had long shied away from. As he prepared to embrace this moment, he found himself questioning the very nature of bravery. Here was a chance to meld the artist with the father, bridging the chasm that had grown unbearable. But would vulnerability be met with acceptance or contempt? Jake's heart raced as he picked up the phone to call Ethan, each ring echoing louder than the last in the silence of his studio. It was time to face the weight of expectation and the possibility of redemption. But as he prepared for what could either liberate or shatter him, he felt an unsettling quiver of uncertainty. What if this conversation only deepened their estrangement rather than recast it in a new light? Such contemplation hung heavy as he waited for his son to answer, ready to confront not just his lingering regrets, but the man he hoped to become. The phone felt foreign in Jake's hand, a portal to a reality he deeply longed for yet feared to confront. He took a deep breath, attempting to quell the nervous turmoil rising within him. Each ring echoed his own self-doubt, drumming against the solemn walls of his studio. When Ethan finally answered, Jake froze, suddenly aware that the moment he had anticipated for days had arrived. "Hey," Ethan's voice came through, casual, devoid of the emotional weight Jake felt, as if it were just another ordinary day. "What's up?" I wanted to talk," Jake stammered, words tight in his throat. He could feel the heaviness in the air, an almost physical barrier between them. This was an invitation to a deeper intimacy, yet the stark reality of their distance pressed down on him. "Is everything okay?" Ethan asked, concern taking root. It surprised Jake how easily his son slipped into protective mode. "Yeah, everything's fine. I've been thinking a lot about us." The words fell out, unbidden and raw. The pause from Ethan felt monumental. "About us? What do you mean?" Jake fumbled in his mind for the phrases he had rehearsed, the sentiments he wanted to express. "I want to show you something I've been working on, something personal." "What is it?" "Art?" Yeah, Jake paused, tightening his grip on the phone. Some drawings. It's a reflection of our relationship. What do you mean? Ethan's voice sharpened, curiously wary, yet hopeful. I'm not great at talking about feelings, Jake admitted, a sliver of honesty cutting through the anxious fog. But I think this might help us. Okay, Ethan replied, though the slight hesitation was not lost on Jake. They agreed to meet later that evening. The dialogue had opened a door, but what lay beyond was uncertain. Jake spent the remainder of the day oscillating between dread and anticipation, confronting layers of anxiety that demanded acknowledgement. He understood that sharing his art was more than revealing his creative spirit. It was a risk laden with potential rejection, yet thick with the promise of reconciliation. In the late afternoon light, Jake meticulously prepared the piece, repositioning it on the easel several times, testing each angle, each light. The chaos of colors seemed to reflect his swirling emotions. Would this boldness shift their narrative? Or was he steering recklessly into a tempest of disappointment? As night approached, he bathed the studio in soft lighting, purposely quelling the shadows that had once felt overwhelming. He contemplated the darkness in his painting, a representation of the complicated bond he shared with Ethan, a powerful image of longing and regret, raw and unfiltered in its honesty. When Ethan arrived, the moment was heavy with expectation. Jake greeted him with a nod that belied his internal tumult, leading him into the studio where the artwork resided. Standing before it, he wrestled with vulnerability, the stark contrasts on the canvas mirroring the emotions he'd avoided for so long. "This is intense," Ethan remarked, taking in the waves of color and angst. Jake swallowed hard, reeling in the momentum of an emotional wave. "I wanted you to see how I feel about us. I know it's messy, just like our relationship has been. But I'm trying to understand." This was the point of no return. Ethan's eyes moved over the painting, widening slightly as he took in its significance. "You feel like this?" he asked softly, a tremor in his voice. Jake nodded, catching a glimpse of the astonishment and understanding in Ethan's gaze. This raw connection was the most he had shared in years, and he saw a flicker of recognition, the beginning of a bridge over their turbulent waters. But uncertainty remained. Had he opened a floodgate or a dam? Would Ethan step forward or withdraw, retreating back to the safety of silence? "Jake," Ethan started, his voice more grounded now. This is powerful. But what does it mean for us?" The question hung in the air, pregnant with possibility as Jake realized that the journey was just beginning, not a conclusion. This moment was rife with potential, a pivotal shift. Toward understanding or another chance for estrangement. As he searched for the words that could express a father's love and the hope for a renewed bond, he understood that the next step would shape the course of their relationship. Desperation settled into hope as he prepared himself for Ethan's response, knowing that this would not merely be a conversation, but a defining moment in their lives. "Are you ready to face what comes next?" Jake thought, feeling the weight of anticipation settle even more heavily upon him. Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself against the swirling emotions in the studio. The question Ethan had posed lingered, a haunting echo demanding clarity. What did it mean for them? His heart raced as he contemplated the fragility of this moment. Would his son's response break the barrier that had divided them for so long, or would it solidify the chasm that had grown wider with each passing year? "I want us to understand each other better," Jake finally said, his voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. "This painting, it's not just about my feelings. It's an invitation for you to share yours too, however complicated they might be." Ethan remained silent, his brow furrowing in thought. Jake's pulse quickened as he met his son's gaze, seeking reassurance, but unsure if he would find it. Was he pushing too hard? Should he have taken a gentler approach? After what felt like an eternity, Ethan nodded slowly. "I appreciate you showing me this. It's bold, but I guess that's fitting considering how we've been." The softness in Ethan's voice was a welcome relief, a slight turn towards connection. Jake felt an unfamiliar mixture of hope and apprehension. The conversation had been opened, but it was still a delicate dance between their histories and unspoken words. "I know I've been distant," Jake confessed, feeling the weight of his past mistakes hover over him like a dark cloud. Fear and pride kept me from reaching out, but I want to change that. Ethan shifted slightly, his expression contemplative. It's a big step, Dad. I felt it too, the distance. Sometimes I thought you didn't care, or that you didn't want to talk about things. His eyes lingered on the painting, then broke away to focus on Jake. How can I trust that things will be different now?
Trust.
The question struck Jake like a bolt of lightning. It was the currency of relationships, and he suddenly felt bankrupt. Because I'm here now, confronting my fear, he stated earnestly. And I'm willing to do the work. I believe we can build something stronger if we start from here. Ethan folded his arms, skepticism etched across his face. But what do we even talk about? It's hard for me to start with this, Jake interrupted, pointing to the painting. What does this make you feel? What do you see? Art is about evoking emotions, and this is how I see our journey. Silence blanketed them again, but this time it wasn't oppressive. It was contemplative. Ethan looked back at the canvas, his eyes tracing each stroke, the intricate dance between light and shadow. Jake held his breath, aware that every moment counted. I see pain, Ethan finally said, his voice soft. Pain and confusion. I've felt that way too. They exchanged a look that felt like a small crack in a dam. Jake understood that this acknowledgement was significant. It was the acknowledgement of shared suffering. I want you to know that I've always loved you, Jake said, his voice heavy with sincerity. No matter the distance or silence. I'm fighting through my own regrets and fears to show you that. Ethan met his gaze, something shifting in his expression. The uncertainty that had previously clouded the air began to clear, and something more profound took its place, an inkling of possibility. I guess I've felt like I had to carry everything alone, Ethan admitted, the weight of years sitting heavily on his shoulders. Then let us carry it together, Jake suggested, a spark of determination igniting within him. He realized that this was far more than a father sharing a piece of art. It was about creating an avenue for mutual support and vulnerability, a foundation on which to rebuild their fractured relationship. I'm scared, Ethan murmured finally, glancing down at the floor as if searching for grounding. Me too, Jake confessed. The honesty of the moment washed over him like a balm. But facing our fears is the first step towards healing. With that, they stood in the depth of their shared uncertainty, yet somehow it didn't feel as overwhelming anymore. Perhaps it was the prospect of change, the hope that flickered like a flame. Between them, urging them forward. As they continued to explore the nuances of the painting and the emotions it sparked, Jake realized he was embarking on a journey not just for Ethan, but for himself as well. This intimate exchange was a pivotal step toward personal transformation, a challenge that would require resilience and commitment. But as he began to unfold his own vulnerabilities, a new question arose in the back of his mind. What would their next steps entail, and could they navigate the waves of unresolved feelings that lay ahead? The path forward was fraught with risks, a taut string stretched tight between hope and fear. Would they leap together into this uncharted territory, or would they retreat into the safety of silence once again? The air in the studio shifted, the weight of unspoken words hanging like mist over the canvas. Jake watched Ethan's face as he absorbed the depth of their moment, a mixture of vulnerability and skepticism etched on his son's features. It was a tenderness he hadn't seen in years, and it pierced through Jake's defenses, stirring an unshakable desire for progress. Let us talk about our feelings, Jake urged. Those words felt like a test, a step toward confronting the intricacy of their relationship. He could sense the tension still coiling around them, a lingering remnant of the years spent in silence. What if it just makes things worse? Ethan challenged, a flash of rebellion igniting in his eyes. Jake recognized the pain cloaked in that defiance, the fear that came with opening old wounds. Then, at least we're confronting it together, right? Jake replied, grounding his thoughts to keep the anger from bubbling beneath. It was not easy to push against that instinct to close off when threatened. He took a deep breath, hoping it would lend him the courage to guide Ethan through the emotional terrain ahead. What else is there to say? Ethan asked, the doubt resting heavily in his tone. "You've been absent, and now you're just here talking about feelings?" There was an edge to his words, the heat of a young man caught between resentment and hope. "That's just it. I've avoided the hard conversations, Ethan. I didn't know how to be present. But realizing my absence hurt you makes me want to change." Jake stepped in closer, sinking into the sincerity of his emotions. "I'm willing to explore all of it, even if it's uncomfortable." Ethan hesitated, the tension in his shoulders betraying a deep-seated turmoil. "What if I can't forgive you?" He shot back, the accusation hanging heavy in the space between them. "Then we work through that, too," Jake responded, determination crystallizing in his chest. "I'd rather face the struggle than keep pretending it's not there. I only want to be honest about my feelings, and I hope you can do the same." "Honesty?" Ethan's voice softened, a note of curiosity evident. "You think it's that simple?" Jake reflected on the question. In the past, he had imagined honesty was a luxury he could afford. But now he understood it was the very foundation they needed to rebuild their connection. "I realize that simplicity doesn't equate to ease. It's a nuanced journey, but being real with each other is crucial." Ethan drew a deep breath, and for a fleeting moment, Jake thought he caught a glimpse of hope in his son's expression. He pressed on. "Tell me what you need. What can I do to help us move forward?" Ethan looked down, grappling with feelings of betrayal and longing. "I just want to feel like you care, like I matter to you. It's always felt one-sided, like I was the burden, and you were just waiting for me to grow up." The burst of emotion made Jake's heart ache. It was more than a simple revelation. It was the fracture at the heart of their connection.
"I'm sorry."
"I never saw it that way, and I don't want to diminish your feelings," Jake said, genuinely wishing he could erase the past mistakes. "You mean everything to me, but I didn't know how to show it. Watching you grow up without me was my own punishment." Ethan met Jake's gaze again, and for the first time, Jake detected a tentative thrill of possibility, a chance for them to architect future conversations that would mend what had been broken beyond recognition. Yet, as the evening wore on, Jake wrestled with a chilling realization. Just being vulnerable and open wasn't going to be enough. It would require regular commitments to check in, to engage, to peel back the layers they had built around themselves over the years. Each moment was an opportunity to support growth, and he would need to be ready to listen more than speak. As they stepped away from the painting, Jake felt a swelling sense of responsibility. Could he commit to this transformation? Could he withstand the discomfort that lay along their shared path, while still extending the grace Ethan needed, the clarity of? The moment was painful yet invigorating, and Jake sensed the next crucial step loomed just ahead. How would he convey this renewed commitment to Ethan without overwhelming him? For the first time in years, Jake faced not just the shadows of their relationship, but the daunting daylight of possibility. But doubt lingered in the corners of his mind. What if this moment of understanding was merely ephemeral? What if true transformation remained just out of reach? The answers teased him, hovering as shadows at the periphery of their ongoing conversation, leaving Jake hanging in the delicate balance of hope and uncertainty. The dawn light filtered through the studio windows, illuminating the remnants of last night's confrontation with Ethan. The dust motes danced, as if mocking the stillness that surrounded Jake's evolving thoughts. Today, their fragile truce hung in the air, waiting for action to solidify the words spoken. Jake stood at the easel, the brush poised in his hand, but his mind swirled with questions and commitments. With a renewed sense of purpose, he decided the best way to demonstrate his commitment was through tangible actions. He recalled his father's insistent encouragement to lead by example. Those words resonated often, yet Jake had only clung to them when it suited his needs, had ignored their deeper implications in the context of familial relationships. Led by example, he muttered under his breath, allowing the mantra to guide him as he summoned a new vision for his art. He began to paint, letting the brush skim over the canvas in spontaneous strokes. Each line symbolized a promise to Ethan, to show up, to be present, to create a vibrant world they could navigate together. The colors he chose radiated warmth and growth, mirroring the glimmer of hope he had seen in Ethan's eyes. As he worked, He whispered his intentions into the stroke's honesty, care, vulnerability. But even as he spread the paint, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that it might be hard for Ethan to trust these intentions. It wouldn't be enough to simply demonstrate change. He would have to find ways to engage Ethan in discussions, to invite him to share, and to genuinely listen to his thoughts and feelings. There was a risk of missteps that Jake couldn't dismiss, and that nagging doubt resurfaced. The doubt festered in his thoughts. What if each conversation became another battlefield instead of a bridge between their worlds? As the evening approached, Jake set aside his palette and took a breath, feeling the fatigue seep into his bones. He knew the time had come to act, to step into the emotional space they'd carved out together, even if he felt unprepared. After preparing dinner with deliberate attention, he called Ethan into the living room. The younger man was tentative, eyeing Jake as he entered, probably still processing their earlier interactions. "What's up?" Ethan asked, arms casually crossed in a defensive posture. "I wanted to create an opportunity for us to talk, just the two of us," Jake said, carefully observing Ethan's reaction. He set down 2 plates of pasta between them and gestured for Ethan to take a seat. "I thought you could show me what you think about the idea of us improving our communication. Share how you're feeling. No pressure, just what's on your mind." The question hung between them, weighted and raw, like the open pages of a book waiting to be filled with untold stories. Jake braced himself for a barrage of emotions. He prepared for the potential pushback, ready to listen. Ethan hesitated, the flicker of apprehension clear in his eyes. "You think I just want to talk over spaghetti, old man?" There was a hint of amusement masking his deeper uncertainty, but Jake knew this was a stepping stone, not an end in itself. "I don't know what you want," Jake admitted, feeling the sincerity pour forth. "But I want to understand you better. If it takes spaghetti or silence, I'm here for it." Several moments passed in silence as they shared the meal, the quiet broken only by the clinking of forks. Jake watched Ethan closely, eager to glean anything he could from his son's expressions, his movements, the way he ultimately dropped his defenses, just enough to take small bites from the pasta. There was a narrative unfolding beyond mere words, a curtain lifting just slightly on the possibility that the bonds of their relationship could be woven anew. Then, as if emboldened by the simple act of eating together, Ethan ventured, "You know, it feels weird doing this. I still don't trust it, you know? What if we just keep falling back into that rut?" Jake felt the gravity of Ethan's confession, a painful yet necessary truth. "Then we'll pull each other out again."
Can we really, though?
Ethan's voice tumbled with uncertainty. The question hung between them once more, unflinching, a challenge, a hope, a plea. Jake drew a steadying breath, ready to confront that very uncertainty.
Yes.
"This has to be worth it. But we need to commit wholeheartedly, not just when it's convenient." And as he spoke, Jake was struck by a deeper revelation. Each moment with Ethan served as a canvas itself, waiting for strokes of color and humanity. They had to redefine their fate together, a vivid tableau painted from raw emotion and honesty. The journey toward understanding was far from over, and one revelation lingered at the forefront of his mind. The conversation was merely beginning. Ethan watched him, perhaps seeing the sincerity nestled within Jake's determination, and for a moment, hope flickered once more in the air between them. Would this be enough to forge a stronger path? Together, within the confines of that tiny studio, they stood at the precipice of change and uncertainty, ready to create a new reality. But lingering questions hung, unanswered. What tools would they discover as they pressed on, and would they find success in navigating unfamiliar terrain? Jake leaned back in his chair, the remnants of dinner strewn between them, and took in the moment. It felt fragile, yet layered with possibilities. He sought clarity in Ethan's gaze, searching for tangible signs of their burgeoning connection. However, the uncertainty lingered, a quiet reminder that even the smallest steps forward could quicken back into the chaos they had struggled to escape. The desire to engage Ethan was palpable, but would his efforts genuinely transform their relationship? "Ethan," Jake started cautiously, "I know you mentioned feeling weird about us. It's understandable, nothing changes overnight. I'm not asking for a miracle. I just want us to try." Ethan shifted in his chair, the tension radiating from his posture. It's just, how do you get someone to trust again? You've been around, but it hasn't he felt like you were really here. The word struck Jake with a weight heavier than he expected. They revealed stark truth, reflecting the gaps in his actions over the years. Just being physically present hadn't he been enough. He needed to connect emotionally. What do you think I could do to make it feel different? Jake asked, the sincerity evident in his tone. Ethan shrugged, an evasive response that masked the true depth of his turmoil. I don't know. Maybe just be honest. Like, about how messed up everything has been. Jake regarded him, mulling over the implication. Each word Ethan uttered could accompany a cascade of reflection and self-analysis. He realized now that ego and fear of vulnerability had held him back from true honesty. I haven't always been open with you, Jake admitted. I've been scared. Scared that if I let the walls down, I'd be overwhelmed by everything that has gone wrong between us. But I recognize that it's time to change. Can we do that together? Ethan's gaze softened slightly, a flicker of something like acceptance passing through. I don't know, old man. I mean, you say that, but what if it's just talk? What if we fall back into the same patterns? Jake leaned forward, his expression earnest. Then we will just keep working at it. Patterns can be interrupted. Maybe that's why I've always hesitated. Connections are messy, but isn't it worth getting messy together? Ethan shot him a look that lingered somewhere between skepticism and intrigue. Are we talking about being a team here? Or just more pasta dinners? Let us be a team, Jake said, determination blossoming within him. Let us tackle what's in front of us. I want to hear your best and worst. Let us lay everything on the table. Jake observed the shift in Ethan's body language, the faintest loosening of his tense demeanor. Now they needed a strategy, a foundation to build the kind of communication they both craved. How about we try an exercise? Jake proposed, eager to put plans into action. We write down a few things we want to improve in each other. Just one or two. Then we'll share them next time we eat together. Ethan raised an eyebrow, curiosity sparking. Seriously? Just like that? Jake nodded, feeling a sudden surge of confidence. Yeah, just like that. It'll help us get specific, set some goals. What do you say? Ethan seemed contemplative for a moment, the weight of this new proposal sinking in. I guess that's a start. It's better than waiting for something to happen. Exactly, Jake agreed, heart racing at the thought of tangible change taking root. We'll both hold each other accountable. But lurking beneath the surface was a nagging fear. What if they couldn't keep this momentum? What if revealing vulnerabilities only drove them further apart? Jake knew that every relationship faced challenges, and navigating through this one required as much bravery as any artistic creation. I'm not perfect, and I don't know how this will go, Ethan said thoughtfully, a slight tremor in his voice. But I'm willing to try if you are. Jake felt a familiar flutter of hope emerging, melding with trepidation. The evening hadn't yielded complete clarity, but it carved out a new beginning instead. A road ahead to travel, fraught with obstacles, but rich with potential. The conversations so far had been transformative, yet Jake sensed remnants of unresolved tension. Let us check in weekly, he proposed, leaning into the possibilities that lay ahead. We'll share how things are going and if we're keeping our promises. Fine, Ethan replied, a cautious smile breaking across his face. But I get to be the critic. Jake chuckled, appreciating this small lightness amidst the seriousness of their discussions. Fair enough. I'm ready for it. Their tentative agreement marked a new chapter, but doubt crept in, whispering reminders of the past. As they cleaned up and the comforting ritual of dishwashing began, Jake felt the flicker of anxiety return. Was he truly ready to confront the deeper issues that lay buried beneath their discussions? As they stood shoulder to shoulder, a sudden thought struck him. What if progress was not just about conversation, but also about confronting the scars that shaped their relationship? Ethan, Jake called, apprehension lacing his voice. What do you think we need to dig into next? The question hung in the air, pregnant with possibility and the weight of their shared history. Jake turned away from the sink, trying to mask the tremor of uncertainty in his hands as he considered Ethan's weighty silence. He knew the question had peeled back layers of their connection, revealing a raw underbelly that both thrilled and terrified him. Anxiety buzzed at the edges of his thoughts, the potential for confrontation translating into an almost palpable tension in the room. "Maybe we need to talk about the past," Ethan finally replied, his voice quiet yet charged with the gravity of unspoken memories. "About what happened the last time we tried being close." Every fiber of Jake's being recoiled at the idea, a desperate instinct to shy away from the emotional reckoning. The memories of disappointment and hurt were well-worn paths in his mind, a maze where he feared he might get lost again. But doing so would undoubtedly stall their progress. "Okay," Jake responded with a steadiness that surprised him. "Let us start there. What part troubles you the most?" Ethan considered this for a moment, his jaw clenching as he looked away, as if summoning strength from the memories. "I think it's the way we kept circling back to the same fights. The misunderstandings, the defensiveness. It felt like we never made any real strides forward." Jake nodded, the truth stinging but undeniably valid. He had often stepped back into patterns of safety, avoiding confrontation, disguising thoughts with laughter, dismissing the underlying issues that carried weight. "But what if we could lay those fights to rest?" he proposed, his voice solidifying with renewed determination. "What if we address them openly and honestly? What if it backfires?" Ethan countered, his tone laced with skepticism. "We can't just skip over what has happened. Can you really handle hearing everything I've felt?" Jake inhaled deeply, the air swirling with remnants of washed dishes and shared hopes. He sensed this was a pivotal moment, the kind that both of them needed to face.
I can.
"I'm willing to listen, even if it hurts. Maybe that's what we need to move forward to confront the truths we've both been avoiding." Ethan's expression softened, but shadows lingered in his eyes. "Yeah, but what if I say something that changes everything? What if the things I bring up break us completely?" Jake could feel the weight of the implications. The fear of destruction was not unfounded. He understood that honesty could shatter fragile bonds. Yet, the weight of unspoken grievances seemed far more suffocating. "Then we will deal with it as it comes. We can't build trust without facing what's real first," he urged, feeling a surge of earnestness rise within him. Ethan remained silent, grappling with the conflict fluently splashed across his features. Just when Jake feared he might retreat, Ethan shifted forward, leaning onto the table with urgency.
"Fine.
But I want to start with how often I felt neglected, like I was just an afterthought in your life." The accusation struck Jake sharply, yet he didn't flinch. Instead, he lowered his gaze, internally wrestling with remorse and accountability. "I get that," he responded, "and I can't deny that it was true. I thought being there physically was enough. I thought that if I was around, everything would fix itself. And it didn't." Ethan's words resonated with disappointment, but there was no judgment, only transparency. It stung more than expected, yet Jake recognized the intention behind it. "Where do we go from here?" Jake questioned, his heart racing at the daunting task before them. Could they start digging into the core of this relationship? Ethan sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose as if to stave off the realities swarming him. "It won't be easy. But I think we start by confronting our fears one at a time."
Deal.
Jake replied, emboldened by the raw honesty shaping their dialogue. For the first time in a long while, he could sense the distinct boundaries of discomfort shifting. They had initiated a dance between vulnerability and courage, an exhausting yet vital rhythm of confrontation. As they resumed washing dishes, the silence hung thick but not anxious. Rather, it cradled the remnants of an important discussion now in progress. The shadows around them flickered with unresolved tension, but it felt as if they had ignited a spark of significant change. Yet in the back of Jake's mind, a wave of uncertainty washed over him. They had merely scraped the surface. The profound fears that underpinned their relationship loomed large, a labyrinth still shrouded in darkness. What lay deeper? What hidden resentments and longings waited in silence for acknowledgement? "Ethan," Jake murmured eventually, soul-searching through the mundane task of cleaning up, "what if, deep down, we discover things not even we expected to be true?" The weight of that inquiry lingered between them, a promise of truths yet to emerge, revelations waiting at the threshold of their next conversation. The dishwater's surface rippled from the light of the overhead lamp, each moment stretching into the profound silence settling between Jake and Ethan. As Jake continued to scrub, he could feel the rhythm of their conversation hanging like an unresolved chord, the kind that urged him to probe deeper and confront the echoes of their past more fully. He had always considered himself someone who could manage emotions, the easygoing friend who could crack a joke in the darkest of times. But with every scrub of the sponge, he could feel the facade slowly peeling away. There was depth he had yet to explore within himself, vulnerability that demanded acknowledgement. It was more than just about reconciling with Ethan, it was about confronting the extent of his own defenses. "Look," Jake began, trying to anchor a sense of focus, "I get that I haven't been attentive. I've developed these habits of avoiding the difficult. But if I need to own that, I also need to understand what led me there in the first place. So let us turn this into an opportunity, a chance to dissect these patterns." Ethan shifted, his posture a mixture of discomfort and curiosity. "What do you mean by patterns? You're talking about diving into your psyche, like it's some kind of diagnostic project?" Jake took a deep breath, sensing the stakes grow higher. With his words, he sought to break down defenses that had long governed his emotional existence. "Essentially, yes. I think we both rely on defense mechanisms, yours being the emotional distance, and mine being laughter and distraction. It's time we peel those layers back. Let us not just excavate what's buried between us. Let's also investigate our own histories." The idea felt daring, and yet Jake recognized there was a compelling urgency to address their individual narratives. He needed to start tracing the steps layer by layer of his own response mechanisms and coping strategies that had shaped life thus far. "What if I told you that I'm terrified of being inadequate?" he proposed tentatively, testing the waters of shared vulnerability. "I've held on to distractions because they kept me afloat, but now it's just suffocating. I don't know how to be more honest with myself, let alone with you." Ethan's eyes widened, revealing a flicker of surprise. "I never saw that coming. You always seemed so confident. This changes the way I view everything. But if you're being honest about this fear, what do you think it means for us now?" Jake opened his mouth, readying a response, but the sheer weight of that question made him hesitate. "I'm discovering I can't see our relationship clearly without seeing my own insecurities that cloud my perception. Those might be led to distance, and if I want closeness with you, I have to shed those weights. Can we confront your fears about neglect first? They deserve their moment just as much." Ethan's expression softened again, emotions flickering like candlelight behind his eyes. "I felt like the other half of me was constantly left in the dark. But maybe if we shine light on both our fears, we can begin transforming that shadow into something more together." The prospect was exhilarating yet daunting. Yet Jake felt a stirring, a belief that this dialogue could pivot their relationship backward and forward. "Let us commit to this," Jake said, excitement lacing his voice. "Facing fears isn't easy, but maybe through openness, we loosen the grip of those patterns that hold us back. We become more than history repeating itself." Their hands, still submerged in soapy water, both embraced a fragile promise for the future. Yet deep within, a disquiet remained. The emotional excavation they had initiated could simultaneously reveal treasures and disasters. What darkness still lay unexamined beneath their struggles? "Tomorrow," Jake finally proposed, breaking the thickening silence, "we'll continue this. Let us map out our next steps, because committing to this level of honesty doesn't just require courage. It requires planning. If we can navigate past this moment, what lies ahead might truly transform everything." With that, a whole new layer of tension enveloped the room, a challenge wound tightly around hope, doubt, and the uncharted territories of their future. What awaited them in the subsequent conversations, fresh discoveries, or new crises? Jake Campbell stood before the easel, paintbrush in hand, contemplating the resonant transformation he had undergone over the past months. What began as a mere job, a security guard's role, had blossomed into a personal journey, revealing layers he never knew were within him. Today, as he meticulously added the finishing strokes to his latest canvas, he reflected on the evolving bond with his son, Ethan, now forged through vulnerability and commitment. Their late-night conversations about feelings, the awkward silences, the raw honesty had opened pathways to reconciliation. Each acknowledgement of pain and fear became a building block for a more substantial, cooperative relationship. Their willingness to confront the past formed a framework for their future. Gone were the days of silent suffering. They exchanged stories, transforming embers of resentment into connecting sparks of understanding. They were each sculptors working together on the same masterpiece, collaborating to mend what had been broken. As he scanned the final painting, a vivid representation of their tumultuous yet hopeful journey, pride surged inside him. He'd mastered not only the technical skill of painting but also a more profound sense of fatherhood. This artwork was a message to Ethan, a testament to their shared struggles and victories. Jake inhaled deeply, relishing the scent of oil paints that filled the air, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He had achieved emotional clarity that had previously eluded him. No longer merely the security guard, he was a father and an artist, a storyteller expressing complex emotions through vibrant strokes. In that moment, achievement morphed into recognition. The college's art department had reached out, inviting Jake to exhibit his work in a local gallery. His art, once buried beneath layers of insecurity, began to receive the acclaim it deserved. He felt an exhilaration that seeped deep into his bones. The validation was far beyond accolades, it was acknowledgement of his transformation and the resolve to remain present for his son. The evening arrived swiftly, bringing with it a whirlwind of emotions. He prepared himself for the conversation he needed to share with Ethan, one that would reflect on how far they had come. Having an exhibit to celebrate symbolized more than just personal success. It represented their journey toward bridging broken connections. The culmination of their efforts laid before them like a canvas ready to be painted anew. As Ethan entered the room, Jake turned to him, his heart racing in silence. "I have something important to discuss," he began, his voice steadier than it had ever been. "Remember when I told you art is a reflection of truth? I want you to join me tonight at my first exhibit. It's not just about my work. It's about us, the stories we've shared." Ethan's eyes widened, surprise and pride shimmering in his gaze. "Are you serious?" he asked, an incredulous smile breaking across his face. "You actually did it?"
Yeah.
"And it wouldn't have been possible without our conversations, the bravery we both showed. I'd love for you to see how I've captured our journey in this latest work." A moment of silence enveloped them, brimming with an unspoken understanding. Ethan stepped closer, embracing Jake in a heartfelt hug. Jake felt the warmth radiating from his son, a connection now embedded in mutual growth. "I'm so proud of you," Ethan whispered. "You're not just the security guard anymore. You're my dad who is willing to fight for us. This means everything." With those words hung in the air, Jake realized that his journey toward personal fulfillment and achieving confidence had ultimately bridged the chasm between them. They had replaced judgment with compassion, misunderstandings with dialogue, and loneliness with connection. The opening night approached, revealing to Jake not just a chance to showcase his artwork, but an opportunity to celebrate healing through creativity, heart, and courage. As he stood for the first time as an artist at his own exhibition, he felt both confident and fulfilled.
The
applause echoed through the gallery, resonating within him, elevating his spirit and solidifying his journey from shadow to vibrant life. And in that moment, Jake knew he had accomplished more than just an exhibit. He had reclaimed his identity, rebuilt his relationship, and enveloped his once muted voice within a powerful narrative that now danced vibrantly across the canvas. Now, to fully embrace this moment and keep the fire of personal transformations alive, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let the world know these journeys matter. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. What touches did you see that brought transformation? And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful story of overcoming. Only true fans of personal journeys understand the importance of supporting this channel through these actions.